few weeks ago, I decided to go back to Dispatch because the completionist in me wanted to get that platinum trophy. And that's when I got the idea for this video. You see, I don't believe Dispatch became a success by accident. In an industry where games are struggling with visibility, rising costs, and player attention, Dispatch somehow managed to break through, and in a massive way. The game sold over 1 million copies within its first 10 days, reaching 2 million shortly after, at the end of its first month. In an interview with its makers, at the time of release, they hinted that the game was already on track to beat its original 3-year sales target in just over 3 months. Fast forward to today, and well, the game managed to sell more than 4 million copies, which is a huge achievement, especially for a 30-person studio. Which makes one wonder, how exactly did they do it? And that's what we're going to break down into today's video. There are at least 8 reasons I can think of why Dispatch became one of the biggest hits of last year. Do you think you know all of them? Let's find out. Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. As usual, my name is Alex, and this is Life About Games. For those unfamiliar with Dispatch, it is an episodic narrative adventure game that follows Robert Robertson III, a fallen mecha superhero who agrees to take on the job of a dispatcher in exchange for getting his armor suit repaired after it got seriously damaged in a battle against the game's main antagonist. As a dispatcher, he is tasked with managing the Z-Team, a group of former villains who, for different reasons, signed up to a rehabilitation initiative known as the Phoenix Program. Through this program, they will be sent on calls, help people in distress, learn how to use their powers for good, and rise to become the next generation of superheroes. Honestly, just this premise alone already tells you a lot about why this game clicked with people. But I still think it's worth breaking it down further. Starting with the development team, one of the biggest reasons why I think Dispatch succeeded is that this was not a first-time indie project, where the team learned as they went. Ad-Hoc was formed by industry veterans, with experience at studios like Telltale Games, Ubisoft, and Night School. And honestly, you can feel that throughout the game. Dispatch understands pacing, dialogue, and how to structure choices. It understands how to keep players emotionally involved from chapter to chapter, episode to episode. Characters are believable, the tension is meaningful, and there is a strong narrative that keeps players engaged throughout the experience. In other words, Dispatch feels confident almost immediately, and I think that confidence comes directly from the experience behind the project. The second reason why this game stands out so much is its absolutely incredible cast. Dispatch features performances from people like the legendary Jeffrey Wright, known for his roles in The Batman, Westworld, as well as the more recent and highly praised film, American Fiction. It also stars Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad, alongside major voice acting talent like Laura Bailey, Alana Pierce, Aaron Yvette, and also Matthew Mercer and Travis Willingham from Critical Role, only to name a few. While it's true that celebrity casting alone does not guarantee the success of a game, in Dispatch the performances really elevate the experience. The dialogue sounds natural, you can feel the chemistry between the characters, and the humor lands. And because the game is so heavily narrative-driven, strong performances become one of the biggest pillars supporting the entire experience. At number 3, we have the game's production quality. While the official budget for Dispatch has never been publicly disclosed, it is clear that the game has a higher production value than most indies. The animation quality is super strong, cinematography is polished, voice acting is exceptional, transitions between scenes feel smooth and intentional, and most importantly, the game feels cohesive, which is something many projects struggle with. You can tell when a project has a strong creative vision and enough resources to execute it properly. And Dispatch never feels cheap. Moving on to number 4, it's time to talk about the game's identity and positioning. Earlier, I talked about confidence, and most of it comes from the fact that the game knows exactly what it is and communicates it clearly to its audience, which is something very important in modern game marketing. Within just a few minutes, you understand the superhero setting, the mature comedic tone, the choice-driven narrative, and the episodic structure. A lot of games struggle because players simply do not understand what they're about quickly enough. But Dispatch has a very clear identity. Its art direction, writing, trailers, and marketing are all aligned, and that makes the game far easier to market and recommend through word of mouth. Now, on to number 5. At the end of the day, none of the previous points would really matter if the writing was bad. But in Dispatch, the writing is actually one of its greatest strengths. The characters feel all very relatable and human. You care about their struggles, their relationships, their growth. And even though the game follows a fairly classic underdog structure, the execution makes it feel fresh and engaging. The humor is genuinely excellent. It feels natural, and I particularly like the decision to lean the game into a more mature and sarcastic tone. Dispatch includes violence, strong language, blood, and sexual themes, clearly taking inspiration of successful shows like The Boys and Invincible, which makes it extremely relatable. And that connection is what makes the game immediately click. People feel familiar enough with the concept to check it out, and then the writing hooks them in and keeps them engaged and wanting more. At number 6, we have the gameplay. One of the smartest decisions the makers of Dispatch made here was to not overcomplicate the game's core mechanics, as it's clear its biggest strength is the story. The dispatching minigame is perfect for what it is. Over the course of the narrative, you will be tasked with managing your roster of heroes, reacting quickly to incoming calls and situations, multitasking, and assigning the right characters to the right missions, based on their strengths and weaknesses. Successful resolutions will result in experience points earned that you can then spend on your heroes to level up their skills. It's a terribly simple mechanic, but also surprisingly engaging, and the strategic and RPG elements keep you invested without never overstaying their welcome. Moving on to number 7, we have the game's episodic release strategy. And this is probably one of the most distinctive and interesting parts of Dispatch's success. The game is divided into 8 episodes, having released the first 2 on October 22nd, followed by 2 more each week for 3 consecutive weeks. Honestly, if you asked me, I think this strategy worked brilliantly. The game takes about 9 to 10 hours to complete, so instead of having one massive launch weekend and then disappearing completely, the game managed to remain relevant for an entire month. Just like a TV show, episodes ended on a cliffhanger to get people excited for what was coming next, and every week people would tune back to discuss the latest events. Content creators continued covering the game. Players kept recommending it to friends. Social media conversations stayed active. That kind of sustained visibility is extremely valuable in today's market. The only downside to this that I would point out is the fact that the release window could have been slightly adjusted in order to get Dispatch into more Game of the Year conversations. Because it launched so close to award season and released episodically, many critics were unable to properly review the full experience before cutoff dates. Still, the game managed to squeeze a nomination for Best Indie Game and Player Voice at the Game Awards, and went on to receive multiple nominations and awards, including the Steam Award for Outstanding Story-Rich Game and 3 BAFTA wins for Animation, Audio Achievement, and Supporting Performer. And finally, at number 8, we have the game's pricing. Dispatch launched at $29.99 for the full 8 episodes, which in my view was a very smart commercial decision. For quite some time now, we have been seeing disruptions in the correlation between price and quality. Just look at Hollow Knight Silksong, which launched at an impressive $19.99 price point. By following this strategy, Dispatch avoided the psychological barrier that comes with $60 or $70 releases. The lower price point helps reduce friction and makes players more willing to take a chance on a new IP, especially a narrative game, where replayability can sometimes be a concern. Also, the fact that Ad-Hoc didn't split the price per episode made sure people stuck around for the whole thing, allowing conversations to keep going and word of mouth to spread. At the end of the day, this patch succeeded because multiple things came together at the same time. An experienced team, strong performances, excellent writing, clear positioning, smart gameplay design, a clever release strategy, and a price point that felt fair. But more than anything, this patch understood exactly what it wanted to be. And in an industry where games are struggling to stand out, that clarity matters more than ever. Oh, and just before we wrap things up, did I get the Platinum Trophy? Yes. Yes, I did. And on that note, we reached the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, I would appreciate if you left your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the channel too, as it really helps it grow and reach more people interested in the same topics. Thanks again, and until next time, stay happy and keep gaming.